The Planet of the Apes franchise is back, this time with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous about this one. The reboot trilogy that came out in the 2010s was surprisingly great, delivering not only amazing visual effects, but more importantly, great characters and great storytelling. I just rewatched all three, and they're even better than I remembered. So you can understand my skepticism going into Kingdom. The bar was set very high, and they're trying to start a whole new trilogy with a whole new set of characters. And guys, they kind of did it again. Many generations after Caesar's reign, supposedly about 300 years later, the apes are now the dominant species, while humans are, well, a wild herd. The story is about Noah, a young ape from the Eagle clan, and his journey of revenge and discovery as he leaves his home behind and realizes there is a lot he doesn't know about the world and others living in it. As for the antagonist, meet the most epically named Proximus Caesar, an ape leader determined to build his own empire using Caesar's name and ideas to his advantage. And you know what? It works. It may not be perfect, but it's an engaging, fun, well-made movie that actually gives me a lot of hope for the sequels. I am, to my own surprise, very interested in finding out where this new trilogy is going to lead. Visually, particularly on the big screen, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is an impressive looking movie, of course. I particularly loved the setting itself, all of those remnants of human civilization that are being broken down by time and overtaken by nature. All of this looks great. For example, there is this beautiful shot in the beginning that you see in the trailer with the eagle flying over this gorgeous green landscape, and you begin to realize that it's actually a city that's now entirely covered by trees and plants. It's this overgrown view that's pretty haunting because of what it is, but also pretty stunning. I will say, I don't think this movie looks quite as striking as the Matt Reeves films, but it still looks great. Also, the visual effects are excellent, which at this point is one of the staples of this franchise, and it is very interesting to see how the ape society progressed, what the different factions look like. It's a world with so much to explore. There is a big issue here though, and that is the characters, particularly how they compare to the characters in the reboot trilogy. And no, you absolutely cannot remove this movie from the reboot trilogy and your memories and experience of it, even though this is a standalone movie with completely new characters. Caesar's presence is all over this film, even though he's not actually in the movie, obviously, aside from a very brief send-off in the beginning. His name is brought up a lot. His ideas and philosophy are mentioned quite a few times. He kind of haunts this film in a way. The problem is that constantly reminds you of his movies, and you just don't have as strong of a connection with the new characters as you did with the characters of the reboot trilogy. As many issues as you can take with the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and many people do consider it to be the weakest of the three, you are still very quickly invested in Caesar's fate, and even though his character gets more interesting and more layered in Dawn and War, a lot of that connection is built in Rise. With Noah, the lead character in Kingdom, it takes a lot longer to get truly invested in his story, and personally, I can't say that even by the end of the movie, I cared about him as much as I cared about Caesar in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I am actually more invested in May, the human character here, than I am in Noah, at least as of right now, and I never rooted for the humans in the reboot trilogy, so that's interesting. Meanwhile, the two best, in my opinion, characters are underused. Raka and Proximus Caesar. Raka is this wise but also quite funny orangutan who kind of reminded me of Maurice, and I loved Maurice, so I was frustrated we didn't get more out of that character. And Proximus Caesar actually is an interesting villain who should have had more screen time and more interactions with Noah. I think there was a lot more to work with when it came to his way of thinking and his goals, but we don't even meet him until way later in the movie. Just missed opportunities, in my opinion, particularly when you have a lead character who is just kind of fine. None of these characters are bad, by the way, especially by blockbuster standards. They're functional, they're likable, but we were spoiled by Caesar and the depth of his character, as well as the supporting characters in that trilogy. And I do hope that in the sequels for this new trilogy, they are going to work on this. Now, of course, this wouldn't be a Planet of the Apes movie without addressing humanity and empathy, and I am happy to say that Kingdom continues the thematic tradition. These themes are something the franchise has always been interested in, as well as the power of unity and the ability to coexist. So if you enjoy that aspect of the Apes movies, you're definitely going to find it here as well. This movie shows different ways of life through different clans, while also emphasizing the importance of keeping an open mind. With Noah in particular, there is this overarching idea of broadening your horizons, of learning and realizing that there's always more knowledge out there, that what you've been taught should not be the stopping point of your personal development, but instead something to build on. It's interesting because every character who thinks they have the answers here is eventually faced with something they didn't expect. Even Raka, who is supposed to be the wise one, has some learning to do, and I think that's beautiful. It's about never underestimating the power of something you don't know. It's more about being open to new ideas and letting them shape your worldview rather than shaping ideas to fit your agenda, which is what Proximus Caesar does. He's kind of the thematic flip side here. He presents himself as a follower of Caesar and his beliefs, but the audience quickly understands he is using what Caesar stood for and slightly adjusting that to be able to control his followers and build his empire. This is definitely an interesting take on legends and beliefs within the franchise. We see Caesar elevated to this status of almost a religious figure whose teachings are to be followed, whose legacy is to be respected. But we also see how these things can get distorted over time or misunderstood or used to gain power and pursue certain goals. If I were to rank Kingdom with the reboot trilogy, I would say it's more fun than Rise, even with the characters the way they are. It's an exciting movie to watch, and overall, I do think it has a little bit more to offer, but it is not as great as Dawn and War. The ending and its implications, though, I'm very intrigued. There's a beautiful visual parallel between the apes and the humans, and there's definitely a hook as far as where these stories might go in the future. Does it mean what I think it means? Are they actually dropping hints about connecting this to the classic Planet of the Apes movies? Let me know what you think in the comments. The way I see it, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is a solid blockbuster that does have more to offer beyond the impressive visuals and promises to make things interesting in the sequels. It doesn't quite reach the heights of the reboot trilogy, particularly the films directed by Matt Reeves, but there's no reason to think it couldn't get there in future installments. Kingdom follows in the footsteps of its predecessors when it comes to themes and ideas, successfully expanding the world and adding to its mythology, while also paying paying respect to Caesar, whose legacy is felt throughout the entire movie. And while the characters do have some room for improvement and the emotional investment isn't 100% there just yet, at least for me, the movie gets the job done and it's a good time, particularly on the big screen. Is 2024 the year quality blockbusters are making a real comeback? I'll make that call after I see Furiosa, but Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is certainly a worthy entry in the franchise and in the sci-fi blockbuster genre in general. The apes are definitely back.